Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of 5 Minutes with Brian. Um, I'm in editing hell today. I'm recording this on the 16th of January, and boy, I will tell you, this is a rough one. I'm self-editing my next novel, and there are two. So, like the very first pass through, when I go through, an editor taught me this trick, honestly. I look for the phrase "it was" because I tend to like if I'm if I'm going through my first draft and I'm just like and I'm making the words happen really quick. I look for the phrase "it was" because "it was" is sort of lazy writing. I think I've talked about this before. One of those things where um, you could say like it was a pain in his side. Okay, no. The sword which pierced his skin was a pain in his side, or something like that. It's just so much. I started out with 261 instances over the course of a novel of it was, and I had to go through and I'm like, okay, when you search for it was, you put space, it was space. That's what you're searching for because if you look for other things, it's not going to be um, quite right because, like, the hit was a good one. If you don't have that space in front, it'll show up in your search, and you don't want that. So when you have it was, you have to figure out what the object of it really was. So like in my example before, it's a sword. Okay. Uh, if you use sword too many times in that vein, then you've got to do it. Anyway, there's a lot of editing torture that goes on with that very first draft of any book. You have a lot to do. And that's before an editor even sees it. I always advise that you go through your own self editing process for two very important reasons. One, you catch a lot of things that you missed the first time around, a lot of like plot holes that shouldn't really be there. And interestingly enough, for me personally, I find a lot of things that I just want to change that isn't quite right or isn't quite what I intended. Um, and it may not be in a situation where it's weak writing, it may be just a situation where I just don't like what's happening in the scene. So I go back and fix that part. Self editing is important, uh, even though it's a giant pain. It goes back to the old adage, you're almost done with a story when you're sick of seeing it. The thought of opening up and reading again makes you want to give up writing and buy a bowling ball or something. Anyway, um, yeah, it's just a lot of work, but it's also part of the process, okay? Self editing teaches you a lot about yourself. It is essentially you teaching yourself about the writing craft. The things that and that's actually where your reading of really good genre specific stuff comes in handy because you see how other people do it, how other people write certain scenes, write certain ways, and it influences you. So when you go back and look at that, you're going through that self editing process. Um, you find things, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is. I never noticed this before. Every time I read, uh, Stephen King or my personal favorite in a more relatable, I think, is Ronald Malfi. Honestly, I think between Stephen King and Ronald Malfi is actually better, in my own personal opinion. Um, but you learn a lot from those other people, and so read extensively. Read my books. Read other people's books. You're going to learn. You're going to learn every single time. That's it for me, this episode of All Things Writing. I hope you're having a wonderful day. It's snowy here in Northern Virginia. Like I said, it's the 16th. There's about 3 inches of snow outside, which is kind of unusual for us. All right, ladies and germs, thank you so much for paying me a little bit of attention. Uh, this is 5 Minutes with Brian. Out.